Metal Slug Tactics lives up to its stone-cold classic namesake from SNK's golden era, with its painstakingly detailed pixel art, head-bobbing soundtrack, and snappy structure. It translates the run-and-gun series to its first turn-based tactics game, but doesn't sacrifice substance for cheap nostalgia. Aside from a few annoying bugs, its excellent retro-inspired shell houses a well-made, distinct, grid-based tactics roguelite that cleverly adapts its frantic roots into a more orderly genre without missing a step. This spin-off takes full advantage of Metal Slug's legions of varied enemy types, distinct locations, expansive arsenal, and fleet of awesome vehicles, sprinkling clever spins on series mainstays, like rescuing hostages to add some extra objectives on the battlefield, and it's not hard to see why the seeming left turn ends up feeling like a logical next step. Before starting out on a run, you'll have to pick out 3 of its surprisingly diverse cast of 9 characters, each with 4 different unlockable loadouts, catering to a slightly different approach. Marco is an all-rounder whose status as leader means lots of his abilities focus on teamwork in both offensive and defensive scenarios, but one of his loadouts lasers in on ranged moves to help maximize the amount of synchronized attacks that he can execute with his teammates in one turn. Alternatively, Trevor is a glass cannon who exposes his targets to death by a million cuts with movement and offensive focused tactics, but one of his unlockable loadouts ditches ranged versatility to double down on close combat. Meanwhile, Fio is a support character with a ton of mobility tools that make her a reliable ally for setting up all sorts of flashy combos, who can also become a self-healing tank. This system helps you build teams around specific goals. For example, you can put Fio, Trevor, and a trap-based specialist named Nadia on the same team with loadouts that let you chase a defensive strategy that revolves around lining up targets and satisfyingly knocking them all down in one fell swoop. Calling Metal Slug's unified fighting force the normal army isn't exactly Shakespeare, to say the least, nor should it be. The premise and plot serve the rule of cool, a master that demands diesel punk machines, clunky guns, tons of explosives, and bad guys that feel ripped out from an 80s action movie. Metal Slug Tactics' art style squeezes every inch of your screen for all the charm and character it can possibly display. Tanks and battleships chug and buckle under the sheer force of their destructive horsepower. Explosions crash into the grid with satisfying flourish, and your characters are never still, even when they're hiding behind cover. To say Metal Slug Tactics oozes personality would be a disservice. It's shooting out of every pixel. If you look to the sidelines of a map, you might find soldiers sightseeing just off a desert battlefield, or notice the video game Peregrine Falcon member Ralph is playing on a tiny TV in the barracks, which is so well animated you can tell exactly which 2D fighter he has running. The attention to detail is so consistent that you can find new stuff to chuckle at in between turns on every run. It's just a delight to jam out to T-Lope's incredible soundtrack and pick up on all the small flourishes. When you think of turn and grid-based tactic games, you might think of XCOM, Mario Rabbids, or Gears Tactics' lengthy encounters that can last for dozens of in-depth turns. Instead, Metal Slug Tactics sacrifices some of the satisfaction you might get from carefully weaving a web to catch unsuspecting prey over multiple turns for smaller engagements that condense and speed up that same satisfying process. Tactics draws a lot of water from Into the Breach as well in this way. Most battles take place on a much tighter grid, with attack and movement range scaled down to match. This keeps the turnover rate between levels pretty quick, no matter the objective, ensuring things stay fresh from battle to battle. Still, it does a good job differentiating itself from the genre-defining classic thanks to its slightly more expansive battles, lower difficulty, and movement-focused mechanics. The goals of each fight here are fun but standard stuff you'd find out in just any tactics game, including the usual eliminating all or some enemies on the field, taking out an enemy convoy, or escorting an NPC to a certain point. Most of these will still only last about 5 turns, and net you some helpful loot to beef up one of your 3 characters' attack power, buy a new upgrade in the shop, or get reinforcements that can be used to revive a down teammate. Secondary objectives reward and encourage skilled play with compelling extra challenges, like completing a level within a certain number of turns to earn bonus loot. Metal Slug Tactics matches the standard structure of your garden variety roguelite by offering semi-randomized runs, each divided into 4 stages that end with a big boss fight. You can opt into taking on just one of these 3 starting stage options, or pursue all of them before venturing into the final 4th area. Each of these stages will subtly scale its challenge with slightly stronger enemy types depending on which level you took on before, ensuring a consistent sense of progress no matter where you start. But the maps and pace of each of these 4 regions remains the same. A banner at the top of the screen even constantly reminds you that there are only X missions remaining until the boss arrives. This is where Tactics feels more like an arcade game than a roguelite. Although there are secret bosses and optional objectives to chase, it doesn't give you any tools to break the rules. There aren't any opportunities to, say, take on the remaining handful of missions left on the map before any given section for higher risk with the promise of a better reward. When a boss does crash onto the Super Mario Bros. 3-like overworld map, you have no choice but to engage, which is frustrating. I wish Tactics offered some extra challenge or special conditions to meet that allowed me to complete a whole area. Victory! Each boss fight does a good job at testing your mastery over tactics, movement, and teamwork-heavy mechanics. The first boss is this massive battleship that targets your squad with homing missiles, tasking you with getting endangered units to cover while making sure they build up enough adrenaline to avoid taking damage. Every few turns, the ship will also shoot down one of the platforms your squad is using to target them, forcing you to make sure your team is able to rotate from platform to platform while also dishing out damage from sufficient cover. Adrenaline and synchronization, which are Metal Slug Tactics' shining mechanical innovations, help to justify its smaller scale. The Falcons can accumulate adrenaline by moving, earning bonuses for jumping between elevations, and clearing small gaps. This versatile resource powers the character's ability to dodge incoming attacks and use special abilities. Linking these 2 crucial tools doesn't just make for a challenging and rewarding push and pull between defense and offense, it also forces you to keep your party in motion. This brilliantly translates the series' run and gun roots into, well, running and gunning, just within the context of a turn-based tactics game. Even characters like the Heavy Ralph, who might be slower or tankier in other tactics games, are highly mobile, with limitations placed on their attack range or ability set rather than the range of motion. This meshes exceptionally well with the synchronization mechanic, which helps Tactics take advantage of its relatively short skirmishes. Whenever one character attacks an enemy or destructible part of the level, other characters within range automatically join in. It's a mechanic that doubles down on the Tactics game's satisfaction of lining up the optimal Rube Goldberg machine of bullets and explosions, with the only limit on stick attacks being placed against boss characters, as they can only be targeted with them once per turn. Thankfully, each team member can still attack them one at a time without the extra teamwork. Most adrenaline-fueled special abilities tie into a specific character's strengths and weaknesses in a way that underlines Tactics' surprisingly diverse cast. Unfortunately, a few infrequent but annoying bugs can sometimes block you from executing your master plan. Resetting the term normally flushes out anything gumming up the works, but that doesn't always help, which can make any issues a pain even if they aren't a huge deal. Mercifully, it's still easy enough to work around most problems since Tactics is constantly creating save states after every move, and quitting to the main menu and hopping back into the fray is helpful without being too time-consuming. From its lively cartoonish sprites to its energetic soundtrack, Metal Slug Tactics is a meticulously crafted ode to the arcade classic that never gets lost blindly chasing its adoration for the series without understanding what makes Metal Slug great. Instead, it introduces a handful of distinct innovations to the tactics genre that masterfully meld Metal Slug's action-packed platforming and shooting onto a grid. Even with some frustrating bugs, there is plenty of fun to be had on each run as you experiment with new strategies and team compositions. For more, check out our reviews of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles: Mutants Unleashed or MechWarrior 5 Clans, and for everything else, stick with IGN.